Good evening. I'm sorry I'm not able to join you in person for this Churches Together in South London meeting. It's on such a serious topic that if I could, I would be with you. Serious youth violence is now becoming such a scourge again in our community. The day I'm filming this, we've heard that a young 19-year-old woman was murdered in Croydon this morning. This is coming after the death of Eliane Andam last month. And again, a young man in New Addington, also a few days after Eliane's death. It is really too much. And we have to work together as churches, as communities, and as wider society to see what we can do to bring this scourge to an end. We have ways to support the community. We have ways to support families. Of course, as churches, we pray, and that is so important. But we can also take actions, sometimes small, sometimes big, that can make the difference in the life of a young person. We have space in our churches where we can host partnership organisations who have special knowledge of how to work with young people who have been impacted by trauma. We have youth groups that we run that we can open to our young people and encourage them and their friends to come along. Of course, we have worship, and we should encourage our young people to join us too. And we have services that can support their families in the needs that their families will have, not necessarily after a death, as I've started out this video to you talking about, but all the many ways that families need support from people, so we don't go down this track of serious youth violence and of death, but we find inspiring and uplifting ways to support the best that our young people can be. I wish you well for the conversations you will have this evening, and I pray that we will find ways to work well together for our young people, for their families, for our community.
You're muted, Bishop Moses.
So thank you very much, Bishop Rosemarie, for that message and prayer. Claire, could you just let us know how many apologies we have before we proceed, please?
We have 10 apologies today.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, we'll get to know the names later on. Thank you for that, Claire. Right, the minutes of the previous meeting have already been circulated. They were sent via email yesterday. I'm sure you may have had the opportunity to look at the minutes. But are there any matters arising that are not otherwise on the agenda for today?
Bishop, I think we need to approve the minutes first.
Right, yeah. So are we happy to accept the minutes as a true reflection of what took place at the last meeting? Okay. Well, I take it that we're all happy to do that. Unfortunately, I can see you, but the silence, we take silence as consent. Okay. Everybody happy for us to adopt the minutes as a true reflection of what took place at the last meeting? All right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Right. Well, we will proceed then to receive Claire's report, the ecumenical officer's report.
The only thing that I'd like to draw your attention to really is what we put on the last page, that our chair in recent years, Bishop Carraway, died very recently, and we're really grateful to him for everything he brought to Churches Together in South London. He was a real friend to ecumenism, and he brought much friendship to this group. Many more friends have joined, and we hope that we can continue in that vein. And we miss him, and we're very grateful to him. The rest of my report, please do read in your own time, so that we don't take up any more time for this meeting on this.
Bishop, you're muted again.
Right, thank you very much, Claire. Right, so program for 2024. We have the week of prayer for Christian unity scheduled for between the 18th and the 25th of January. Please do share your plans with us regarding this annual International Week of Witness. All right. Now, we would love to support you if you have any programs to share. The resources for 2024 are now on the CTBI website. And for this year, this year's resources have been prepared by the churches in Burkina Faso. They have worked together to reflect upon what it means to love our neighbor in the midst of security crisis, as many live with the threat and memory of serious violence. We will gather senior South London church leaders together for a time of reflection and fellowship, and we will release a joint statement from this time together. We will also offer an ecumenical briefing online, open to leaders and laity. This will take place on the 18th of January from 8 to 8:45 p.m. with a focus on an ecumenical Lenten vigil outside Parliament with a coalition of Christian NGOs for climate justice. This will be the first 10 days of Lent from Ash Wednesday to the second weekend, which is the 14th to the 24th of February 2024. Then we will have the churches together in South London big gathering in May and November. We will meet in person in May and be online in November. Okay. Right, other business. There's only one item for any other business. And if Joel is here, could you just present that in a minute, please? Joel.
Yeah, shall I share now? So I just wanted to share a little bit about something called Shine Your Light. I don't know if you have come across this yet, but I know there are an awful lot of denominations that are going to be involved and have signed up to this initiative. It kind of started with Jonathan Oliadi and a few others at the Global Day of Prayer. And it's essentially encouraging churches to get out onto the streets or into your communities to then do some outreach across a particular weekend, which, if memory serves me right, is the 16th and 17th of December, and to particularly do Christmas outreaches. And it doesn't matter whether it is really small scale and just 3 of you there chatting to people, or whether actually you feel like you've got the resources to do something much bigger and could have a choir on the streets or at your local shopping centre or whatever it can be. But the idea is that this is taken off and hopefully all across the whole country, there'll be hundreds, if not thousands of these happening. And then people will travel around and see it. You're driving through London, you see it happening in about 10 locations. That's the kind of heart and the vision across this weekend. We're just encouraging people to do something on the streets. There is a website called shineyourlight.org.uk. I don't know if have we got some information? Yes, brilliant, Patrick. So I don't know. And there was also the possibility we might show a video. Do we want to do that? Thank you, Patrick. Here it is. Brilliant. There we go. Shine your light. And so we could just watch a very, very short introductory video that explains a little bit about it.
On the Shine Your Light weekend, we want to celebrate Emmanuel, God with us.
And we want to share this good news of Jesus with our communities everywhere.
I'm in.
I'm in.
I'm in.
I'm in.
and everyone everywhere will be singing and dancing and celebrating together
as the good news of Jesus rings out through our streets and neighborhoods.
Join hundreds of thousands as we all shine our light,
bringing hope and bringing joy everywhere.
Do we, Mary?
I'm in.
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 I am in.
I'm in.
And I'm in.
To be part of this wonderful united family coming together at Christmas, we would like you to join us at www.shineyourlight.org.uk.
Joy to the world!
Brilliant. So that's the promo video, and that's the introduction. It's kind of come together in the last couple of months and gained some traction. And so the Evangelical Alliance are involved, Churches Together in England are involved. I know the Baptist Union are involved, the Methodist, Salvation Army. It's got about 40 different denominations or church groups now, or charities and mission organizations that are getting behind this. So if you haven't heard about it already, it may start to trickle down and you'll hear about it soon. But I really want to encourage you to get involved. There's a couple of things you can do. One is you're very welcome to run your own outreach, and you can go on the website and you can do two things. You can register and say that you want to do that, and then you can put the location in, which makes it eventually that will become public, so others could come and join you at that outreach, other Christians who might just be looking for something to join in. And then also there'll be resources appearing on how you might want to do it, or publicity, logos, branding, all this kind of stuff will kind of start dropping onto the website across the next couple of weeks, and you could get that and put it together if you want to. And then the other way you could do it, if your church doesn't want to do it or isn't in a position to run it, you could be that person that then goes on the website, looks what's happening locally and think, you know what, there's one happening around the corner from me. I'm just going to go and join in and support them, be another voice, chat to people, pray for people, and sing on the streets. Whatever you want to do. It's really kind of an open book as to how you might want to do it and how small or how big. But the encouragement is to go and just shine your light and encourage people about the fact that we have Emmanuel, God with us, who was born at this time of year, and get onto the streets as the church. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you. Thank you very much, Joel. Okay, we're all in, I believe. All right. So tonight's gathering is focused on how churches are working together to tackle serious violence, which has already claimed so many young lives in London this year. And we are delighted to welcome our speakers this evening. First and foremost, we'll have Rev Steve Chalke MBE, who is an author, a speaker, and former UN Special Advisor on Human Trafficking and Baptist Minister of Oasis Waterloo. In 1985, he founded the Oasis Trust with a vision to build inclusive local communities, providing housing, education, healthcare, and other community building initiatives. Steve is now working with the Ministry of Justice to create the UK's first secure school. And we will also hear from Operation Forgiveness, London team leader Charlotte MacDonald. Charlotte and Steve will have one question each for us to discuss in the breakout rooms. We will also be joined by CEO of KIC, Joe Lowther, plus senior youth leads from XLP, including Jerome Hughes, head of youth work. Right, now we will welcome our first speaker, Reverend Steve Chalke.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this gathering and to have the opportunity of speaking to you. We've just heard those really moving prayers, and we're here to talk about serious youth violence. I'd like to start by talking about very serious youth violence and then progress to what I think really is the issue in front of us to talk about together. I talk about serious youth violence in the sense that in 2010, almost 13 years ago, getting on for 14 years ago now, I began a conversation with government. And in that conversation with government, which was with a man called Mr. Chris Grayling, who was at that time the Lord Chancellor in charge of the department, the Ministry of Justice. He began talking to me about justice for young people. And I said, I think there's very little justice for young people in our country. that led to him asking me to write a paper and another paper and various meetings. And across the last decade, a whole decade and almost getting on for a half now, we reached the place where Oasis, which is the charity that I founded, has been asked to establish a brand new custodial system. From next April, some children, young people involved in serious violence, instead of being convicted and sentenced to Feltham or Cookham Wood or some of the YOIs, that youth prisons that you know about, will be able to come to what we almost completed building, open in April, Oasis Restore. Oasis Restore is a therapeutic instead of a penal method, will be a therapeutic method of working with young people who've fallen into crime, fallen out of school, fallen into exploitation, been groomed, been criminalized, and then been locked up. I'm sure that all of us on this call know about what we call the school to prison line. A young person is an atypical learner. They don't fit in exactly the same way as others do. Their brain may work differently. They are neurodiverse. They're struggling with trauma from their background, the impact of social and economic poverty, and its impact on families and their communities. And what happens to them, of course, is they end up behaving in ways that we regard as antisocial and are antisocial, but in actual fact, from their world, are just communicating something. All behavior is communication, isn't it? All behavior is communication. And in that conversation that began with Chris Grayling and has continued with several secretaries of state responsible for justice in our country, we came to the place where a year and a half ago, the law was changed, and Oasis, so I'm told by the secretaries of state, is the first charity, a Christian charity, but the first charity altogether in history to be given the opportunity of running a custodial establishment. So instead of young people being sentenced to Feltham or wherever, some of them will be sentenced to come to Oasis Restore, which we built in Rochester in Kent. Why have we done that? That's really what I want to talk about, and not talk about us at all, but talk about the issues behind all of this. We all know, obvious point here, that every acorn that falls from an oak tree this autumn has the potential to become a mighty oak itself. But not every acorn will become an oak tree. In fact, the vast, vast majority of them won't. Their opportunity to fulfill what's born into them is simply about the soil they find themselves in, the environment they find themselves in. Is the soil nutritious? Is it deep enough? Is it irrigated? And as they grow, are they in a place where the wind howls and overcomes them and overwhelms them? If an acorn is planted in a safe place, in safe soil, it will grow into what it was in potential. Without that, it will be stunted and it will die. That is what happens to so many young people in our society. So perhaps rather than concentrating on serious youth violence, society should concentrate on youth work. Youth work. We know that just as human lungs need oxygen, so a person, in order to thrive, needs love and acceptance. These truths, of course, are contained in the teachings of Jesus. But in actual fact, now the science backs all of that up. It's not that the teachings of Jesus were quaint and out of fashion. is that the teachings of Jesus are backed up by the latest neuroscience. We know now that, well, we know that Homo sapiens have been on planet Earth for about 200,000 years, give or take a bit. Some say longer, some say a bit shorter. But here's the reality that we now understand because of brain scanners, because of the MRI scanner, because we can look into a human's brain and watch live that brain's development, what lights a child's brain up, what brings them happiness, what brings them pleasure, what brings them stability, what triggers them, what causes them stress, anxiety. We now know all of these things in real time, scientifically. Human beings were made, as the neuroscientists tell us, and neuroscience is, of course, the science of the 21st century. Neuroscience wasn't a science when I first began Oasis in the 1980s, but it has become a science. We know now that human beings were made and are made for small community. For 199,800 of the years human beings have been on Earth, we've lived in small communities. Every child was raised in a multi-generational community where they were known and they knew everyone. Over the last 100, 150 years, depending on where you live, we've, as a human race, experimented with something completely different. Autonomized lifestyles, individualism reigns, especially here in the West, rather than the East. We have more technology than any age before us. We are surrounded by medicines, far more medicines than any age before. And yet we have a greater problem with mental health and emotional health and spiritual health than ever before. We actually know, through looking through MRI scanners, that the human brain is developed and adapted for small community, and that we struggle when that is not given to us. We know that the vast number of young people, in fact, all the young people in the youth justice system, because they committed serious violent crime tonight, come from effectively three groups. About 4% of the young people who live in our country are looked after, fostered, looked after. Getting on for 50% of all young people convicted of violent crime and serving in custody tonight come from that small proportion of the community, because they've not been loved, they've not been cared for, they've not been seen and heard. No attention has been paid to them. We know that that's the issue by just looking at the data. Around about 15% of young people in our society are on the autistic spectrum. They are neurodivergent in their learning styles. Over 80% of everyone in custody for serious violence, young people, come from that small percentage. We know that Black children and children of mixed heritage are more likely, far more likely. They're overrepresented in the criminal justice system for young people. I should say, as I'm sure you know, that no young person gets a custodial sentence today anymore because they stole stuff from Tesco's. They get sentences for serious violence, murder, attempted murder, grievous bodily harm, rape, attempted rape. So the very young people that we are talking about come from those groups in our society. And what we know about them is that all of them have been traumatized. All of them have endured abuse or violence or hardship or are neurodiverse and do not learn in the same styles as other people, and through that have withered. They've been neglected. Back to acorns. If you plant an acorn in good soil and give it a good environment, it grows. Without it, it doesn't. So we know what the answers to our big question really are. The answers, as the science tells us, are simply this: that we need to belong. Neuroscience has revealed a lot to us about childhood brain development. Some of you will know a little bit about child psychology, know that a few years ago there was a crop of books on the first 1,000 days of a child's life and how important it was, that attachment to a primary caregiver, that sense of unconditional love and acceptance, how important that primary attachment is to a child's healthy development. It's the soil in which the acorn grows. Then there have been a crop of books about the first 5 years of a child's development. The first 5 years are so important neurologically. Their brain is developing faster than at any other point in their lives. They're making neural pathways. And we know that a child who witnesses violence will be triggered by violence. We know that a child that's not loved will search for love in all the wrong places and become aggressive sometimes when they can't find it. And these things are not mapped out for certain. These are just predeterminations. Nor are we saying, by the way, that every child who grows up through poverty or is not loved will end up criminalized or in violence. But we're saying that these things do not help at all. Now we are discovering, and books are beginning to be written around adolescent brain development. We now know why adolescents take risks, teenagers take risks. We now know why they find it so hard to break away from a gang, because the parts of their brain which determine who they are and their self-image and self-perception are not yet fully developed until into their mid-20s. We know why a teenager spends so much time looking in a mirror and why they need to wear what their peers are wearing and speak that language, etc., etc. We know that now. It's not to do with hormones. It's to do with brain development. You're just at that stage. So we know why adolescents are so easily led. We know that they're searching for a sense of identity. And we know that if they don't find that in safe places, they find it in other places. They look for love and they look for acceptance, and they find it because they need to belong. And the gang or whatever becomes the place of belonging if there's no other place to belong. I've just written a book, which I'm told someone's going to put into the chat. So if you're interested in it, you can explore it. It's called A Manifesto for Hope, A Manifesto for Hope. And it's 10 principles that I've learned over the years about how to create opportunity for every young person, every child, and every family. How we break down the gap between the richest and the poorest, those who are seen and those who are not seen, the heard and those who are not heard. How do we create a level playing field? And I'll tell you just one story from it to finish and make the point about where our opportunity as churches. It was on December the 1st, 1942, that a hitherto unknown gentleman in his mid-60s wandered up Downing Street, knocked on the door, because you could do that then, and delivered a report that he'd been asked to do for government. It was 300 pages long. This report wasn't like any report, because over the next year, it sold 600,000 copies to members of the British public. Over the next year, it was translated into 22 other languages. And then we had a long, laborious title, which even I can't remember, even though I've written about it. It's known by its more popular title. It was simply known as the Report that created the welfare state and the NHS, the Beveridge report. The gentleman concerned was William Beveridge. After the Second World War finished, 3 years later, the government of the day began putting in place bits of the welfare state to care for the young, to care for the old, to care for the vulnerable, to create opportunity for all. In 1948, they began to put together the NHS, which was given birth on July the 5th, very famously, in 1948. But here's the thing. 2 years before the NHS was born, Beveridge wandered back up Downing Street, knocked on the door, and delivered another report. And the second report said this. Actually, it was the third report that he delivered, but it was the second report. It was a report leading on from the one that we famously know that created the welfare state. This report basically said, it will never work. It's fatally flawed. Beveridge said that when he learned that the government had taken his ideas and placed them all in the hands of professionals and were leaving out voluntary bodies, he said, it did make my heart faint. The second report was all about the fact that he'd always called for a partnership between churches and other volunteer groups, between grassroots community groups and the big statutory bodies. He said it would never work. In the book, I also tell the story about the day when I was asked by Tony Blair, who was then Prime Minister, because Oasis runs schools across the country. We have 32,000 children in our schools across the country, so I know a great deal about this. But I was asked to a breakfast to discuss the NHS and its survival. And Tony Blair said this to me. He said this to us all, but it was the point that he made following something I'd said about churches. He said, Steve, it's like this. He said, before the NHS, churches were left doing all of the pastoral work in community before the welfare state. But then we looked at you and you weren't doing a uniform job everywhere. So we decided that we had a responsibility and government took over responsibility. You were holding the baby and you couldn't cope with it on your own. Now we're holding the baby and we don't know what to do with it. The child needs two parents. There is a role for the church, many roles for the church. The best way we address serious youth violence is to start addressing it before it ever happens, to understand what brain science now tells us, that everyone needs to belong. We need youth clubs again. I wonder how many of our churches are running youth clubs. I wonder how many churches are engaged with young people. How many of our churches are deeply engaged with our local schools. Schools need churches to come to their support and to their help in a holistic way. Our society needs churches to deliver youth work. As youth work in our country has collapsed, the rate of youth violence has steadily risen. In fact, I put it to you that you can map one against the other. It's time for our churches to reconsider the role that we can play alongside schools, and it's time for us to reconsider the opportunity we have to create places of safety for young people and adolescents whose brains are maturing, who need community of their very essence, to find the attachments and the peace and the acceptance that they need in order to thrive. I believe it's these issues that sit right at the heart of everything that we are being asked to talk about and should talk about. I believe that, as Isaiah says, famously, our day will dawn, our night will end, our daylight, our midday will come, when we meet the needs of those who are struggling. Now, I believe, is our moment. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much, Steve. That was very insightful and very, very thought-provoking. It is said that it is better to build a hedge at the top of the hill than to build a hospital at the foot of it. And most often we have been found channeling resources into dealing with symptoms rather than the root cause of the problems. We will have, I believe we'll have a bit of time to reflect on this in the breakout groups, and again to ask questions when we come to the Q&A session. Thank you very much, Steve. Right, so next is Joe Lowther, CEO of KIC.
Hello, nice to see you. Is it okay for me to share screen?
Yep, guess, yeah, Reverend Patrick, I guess can help with that.
Yep, I'm in. Thank you very much. Thank you so much, and it was great to hear from Steve. It was lovely to meet with you, Steve, earlier this year, and hear the amazing work that you're doing. Thank you so much for doing it. It's inspirational. So I'm just going to share with you for 5 minutes about KIC and some of the work that we have been doing and with children and young people across South London. So in terms of our work, I'm going to take you through our mission, innovation, and movement. In terms of our mission, we are motivated because of a number of the areas we've just looked at, that children express a sense of hopelessness. 1 in 3 15-year-olds identify with a mental health condition. 95% of children and young people don't go to church at all in the UK. 2 million grow up in lone parent families, and UNICEF identified fatherlessness as one of the 4 pillars of global poverty. And then 3 out of 5 16 to 24-year-olds would say they feel disillusioned with life. These facets contribute towards this sense of hopelessness. And so we want to give children and young people a hope for the future, as well as a joy in the present. And so it's our mission to transform young people's lives with God's love through sport and support. And our vision is to reach a generation of young people within a generation of time. So we aspire to reach the 15 regions of the UK across the next 15 years. Our innovation is that if children and young people have stopped coming to church, where are they? Well, 4.5% of children and young people go to church, but 99.1% of children and young people go to school. So we go into schools and we do 4 things: PE, street dance, mentoring, and chaplaincy. And then we partner with local churches to upskill volunteers to run extended sport or dance coaching at the weekend at a time which is complementary rather than in conflict to when church happens. These are called KIC academies, to provide as a stepping stone to welcome children and young people back to church. So drilling into these 2 areas a little bit further, I was previously a principal of an outstanding school. I felt called out of that and into mission. And when I came, I wanted to try to reimagine coaching from a head teacher's perspective, which we did through a values-driven methodology unique to us called ACE2. And that simply is to provide aspirational coaching, so a really wide range of different sports and dance disciplines. So anything from boxing to Brazilian carnival, you name it, we do it. The C of ACE2 is that we believe in compassion. And so we're proud to be able to offer the solutions-focused approach to mentoring, which builds on cognitive behavioral therapy, otherwise known as CBT. And this is often where we work with really vulnerable and challenging pupils. And we now work with over 1,000 struggling young people a week in terms of our services. Furthermore, the E of ACE2 is that we believe in excellent education. We believe in sport for all, not just the most gifted, talented, or affluent that can afford it. We really believe in the transformative work of sport. The first I of ACE2 is that we believe in intentional relationships. And so we apply a Christian value to every lesson that we coach in schools. And these are some of the things young people say about us. Jaden says, I look forward to school when the KIC coaches are in. He's found a role model that he's been so desperately seeking. Or Tamika, who talks about how she feels listened to and accepted for who she is by our mentors. Or Jean-Paul, who talks about how we've become an integral part of school life, developing an outstanding curriculum. And again, these are important relationships that we form. And then the final I of ACE2 is that we believe in integral interactions. And so we're very pleased to be able to provide lay chaplains to schools that follows the 7 nationally recognised dimensions of schools-based chaplaincy to be pastoral, worshipful, spiritual, missional, servant-hearted, prophetic, and pedagogic. So those are the 4 things we do in schools, and ACE2 is how we do them. But this stepping stone is the KIC Academy. And this is where we upskill local people from local churches to reach local young people with some coaching, with an inspirational thought from the Bible, and then an application of matches, or if it's a dance-based one, routines. At our most recent tournament in South London's Shelley Park in Croydon, we saw 31 children give their lives to the Lord at that tournament after playing knockout stages and group matches, etc. And it was really exciting to see that. We want to empower and upskill local churches to run these sustainably through volunteers. And so we've distilled down 20 years experience into just 7 questions for startup to make life as easy as possible for churches to run these. Because we want a 4D approach to mission. We want to demonstrate God's love in the schools, declare the gospel, and help young people make a choice, a decision about who Jesus is in the KIC academies, so that they can be discipled by local churches for a lifetime. So that's our mission, our innovation. I'll close with our movement. We've moved from 17 schools to 121 across the last 7 years. Our staff team has grown from 7 to 88 in that time period. As I mentioned earlier, we're now working with over 1,000 struggling young people in mentoring as one of our 4 services in schools. And in London, we've moved from 6 boroughs to 28. And in many ways, we've moved right across from Richmond to Croydon and grown to nearly each borough in South London. We're growing to the north as we speak. But not only that, there are 11.5 million children and young people in the UK that are in the 31,000 schools and sadly not yet the 40,000 churches. And so we've grown out of London to the West Midlands, East Midlands and the East of England last year. Then this past year to the Northwest and Northeast, planting satellite sites in the South and Southeast for the year ahead, as we start this journey to the 15 regions in 15 years. We grew at a rate of 5 in 5 years, initially founded in Richmond, and as I say, growing across South London and beyond. So we grew at a rate of 5 in 5 years to reach 10,000 kids a week. And we dreamed. We said, what would life look like if we grew at a rate of 4 in the next 5 years to reach 40,000 kids a week? What would then life look like if we grew at a rate of just under 4 in the following 5 years to reach 150,000? And then what might life look like if we grew at a rate of 6 in the final 5 years to reach 1 million children a week, 10% of the unchurched children and young people in the UK? Well, I'm delighted to tell you that we've given our 5 loaves and 2 fish to the Lord, and he is a God of miracles, because we've nearly trebled in size from 10,000 to 27,381 kids across the last 3 years, well on our way to our first 40,000 milestone by God's grace. Our gift to each of the boroughs in South London is new KIC academies with local schools. It's new ways of working within local schools, and it's new workers. We are creating new jobs for people that believe in our Christian mission and want to make a difference with children and young people. We employed 19 new staff at the start of this term, and we are recruiting again. And so if you know of people looking for work, please do put them in touch with us. I'll put my email address on the chat. We've run out of time for the story, so it's fine. But look, there are these 3 areas for prayer and for action for us. Firstly, do you know of any local schools? As a former head teacher, I love meeting head teachers. I'd love to meet them and see where we could place KIC coaches into schools to make an impact. Secondly, are there people in your church that could be inspired around sports ministry? In Croydon, when we first came there, it was because of a stabbing 18 years ago of a child, and I think the tragic funeral of Eliane was on Sunday at New Life Christian Centre in Croydon, and that inspired us again to make a difference in our communities. So if you'd like to set up a Kick Academy, we'd love to speak to you. And then thirdly, if you know of people looking for work that believe in our Christian mission and want to make a difference, please put them in touch. My email address is there. I'd love to speak to you. So thank you so much. And yeah, please do get in touch if you'd like to know more. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joe. Wow, I mean, one very significant work being done in our schools. Thank you, Joe.
No problem, my pleasure.
Right, so next is Jerome Hughes, Head of Youth Work at XLP.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Hello, everybody. My name is Jerome Hughes. I'm joined with some of my amazing colleagues, Danielle Widger, who's the Head of Youth Work in South East London, Bex, who is the Volunteers Manager, and Emmanuel, who heads up our Literacy and Numeracy Programme. So many of you may know about XLP and many of you may not. Those of you may not, XLP was a charity started off by an amazing visionary called Patrick Regan in response to some serious youth violence in 1996 in the kind of the Southwark area. From there, XLP has kind of always journeyed alongside young people wherever they are within their local communities. And kind of 27 years later, we're currently working in 9 different London boroughs. Big thing about XLP is that we journey with young people intentionally. A big thing about us is we want to be intentional with them and working with them for the long term. The way that we do this is we have community engagement tools. Some of you might have seen our buses around. We have buses that are converted into youth clubs. And we basically, rather than a young person come into a particular building or coming out of area, we take that vehicle directly to their community on their doorstep. And a big part of those communities that we engage is that the dream is that we will work in those communities for the long term, and that we will see many of those young people in more than one environment. The way that we kind of do that, we kind of build, we call it the XLP hub model, which we will have 3 different sort of community engagement points that we would want to see those young people in. So say, for example, we worked on a particular estate in Gypsy Hill. We would have a bus there. And then the dream is that we would work alongside a church that's connected to a community project. And then the dream is then to work in a local school that majority of those young people attend. With the biggest vision is really that we have more than one engagement, multiple levels of engagement with the young people, and we believe that that will help build more of a long-term relationship. So when we're in the communities, we want to build relationships with their parents, we want to build relationships with the local shopkeeper, the local area. So we're also a bit of a pillar of light within those communities in a lot of ways. And then the dream is to have a church there that we have a partnership with that ideally would volunteer and help and support. With us in XLP, obviously we come in and we've got a vehicle and we come in and we might be there every single Tuesday, every single week, but the church is there forever. That building is there, that's sustainable. And the dream is that that church will provide volunteers, they'll provide prayer, they'll provide support in a lot of ways that we kind of need. And then we go into schools and then we deliver mentoring, one-to-one mentoring, and group mentoring, helping the schools kind of tackle some of that exclusion reduction. We have a few programs that we deliver within that space, within school. And again, it's really trying to work with those kids that we see within the community in a lot of ways. Over the years, XLP has grown. I think we was very much known for our bus, but we've kind of expanded a lot of our departments within the organization. So we have a sports department that also would be connected to a community project, again, giving young people within that community a variety of choice of what they need or what their interests may be. Outside of that, we have an arts department that we have a studio in Stratford, in the Stratford Centre, but we also have X-Mobile, which is a van converted into a music studio that also kind of travels around and goes to the different local communities to engage them there. We've got a literacy and numeracy program that's headed up by Emmanuel, which again, a big part of young people is what we want to do is create positive futures for them. So we find that English and maths is obviously one of the key skills that young people need to thrive and go on to wherever they need to be outside of that. Alongside that, we have a huge mentoring program that we basically signpost of volunteer mentors to young people, and that volunteer and that program will run for a year, seeing them once or twice within every week or every 2 weeks, again, to have build that long-term relationships and role models and different things like that. So yeah, that's the majority of the work that we do. We have an apprenticeship program, a young leaders, a ready to work kind of stream within the work that we do as well. A big thing that we're passionate about and some of our core values is working for the long term and putting young people first and being rooted in Christ. I would say that they're probably our three strongest values. I say sometimes what makes us different to many others is that we have a staff team committed to these young people for the long term, that we want to get alongside them. And we have an amazing staff team that kind of go above and beyond with some of the most difficult young people that we have within our communities. Some of the communities that we've worked in over 15 years. We're known within the community. I mentioned before about being a pillar of light within that space. To go through some of the areas that we currently work in South London, if anybody wanted to get involved, any churches wanted to be connected to us, please get in touch. So we work in Lewisham, we work in areas Sydenham, Downham and Brockley. If anybody is interested in those areas, Danielle is the person to get in contact with. In Greenwich, we work in Abbey Wood, Eltham and Charlton. In Southwark, we work in Denmark Hill, Peckham and Bermondsey. In Lambeth, we work in Brixton, Tulse Hill and Stockwell. The way that you can help out and support us is by volunteering or being connected in any way. If you need training, we can provide that training and development. Prayer and putting on prayer events for us is always amazing, and just kind of being that intentional, seeing how things are within those projects. And yeah, being a mentor, we've got a big mentoring program that we need to deliver in each of our boroughs. So if any of you, if you know anybody that is willing to mentor a young person, the young people that we kind of speak about who are in need of this, then that would be great. If you have opportunities within your church or any spaces where there's multiple people where we can kind of come and do a bit of a presentation, a bit of a speech about the work that we do, that will also be quite incredible. Thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you very much, Jerome, for that presentation as well. Thank you. So it's good to know there's a lot going on out there. As I said, that we don't need to reinvent the wheel. Just find out what others are doing and just be part of it. Right. So finally, we have Charlotte MacDonald's and Operation Forgiveness. After which we will go out. We'll get into the breakout groups to discuss a few more things. Right. Charlotte.
Hi everyone. Great to be here tonight. Real privilege to be here. So So my name's Charlie, or well, Charlotte or Charlie, and I work for London City Mission, and I've worked there for the last 2 years. London City Mission is actually a charity that's 200 years old, but we still have the same vision as we had 200 years ago, as our founder Joseph Naismith had when he arrived in London from Glasgow. And that same vision is needed because London has the same need. There's huge sections of our capital's population, people living in our communities who have no opportunity to hear the gospel or even be invited to church. So that's why we exist as an organisation. We partner with churches to help them reach into those communities. So I lead the schools team, and we partner with London churches to envision, equip and support them to love their local school communities in many, many different ways. As Joe said, schools are where we find our young people, aren't they? So it's a really, really important mission field. And as Steve said, schools need churches. So I'm seconding and supporting everything they both said. One of those ways that we partner with churches to love their schools and the young people in those schools is through Operation Forgiveness. So we've heard tonight about the growing epidemic of youth violence in our city. The tragic loss of Eliane to knife crime in Croydon just a few weeks ago. And it can leave us feeling really helpless, can't it? And wanting to do something in response. And we've heard some of the ways already that we as people in churches, as Christians, can do something. And it's really helpful because most of us don't know what to do. I'm just going to ask you to listen very carefully for the next 5 or 10 minutes because me and my colleague Sarah are going to tell you about something tangible that you and or the people in your churches can do, something powerful and effective and gospel-centred that can truly make a difference. So I'm going to introduce you to Sarah. I think, brilliant, thank you, that was very efficient. Here's Sarah. Sarah is part of the Operation Forgiveness team and her story is at the centre of our project. Hi Sarah, are you all good?
Yeah, I'm fine, thank you.
Well done.
Hi everyone.
You remember to unmute just like I did. Brilliant. Yeah. So I'm just going to ask you a few questions. We have sort of practiced these already, but Sarah, tragically, you have also lost one of your children to knife crime several years ago. Please, can you tell everyone here what happened?
In 2010, July 2nd, my youngest son left home at about 8 o'clock to get to school for 8:30. And at 9 after 9, the house phone rang, and it was a teacher telling me there's been an incident in the school. I ran out and in time to get into hospital to be told by the doctors that they have exhausted all their effort and they pronounced my son dead. And he has been, he was stabbed 4 times, one in his buttock, one in his neck, and twice in his chest, piercing his heart. And yeah, I was next to him when he passed, when he was pronounced dead.
Thank you, Sarah. I know it doesn't get any easier the more you tell Zach's story. Can you tell us a little bit about how Operation Forgiveness came about and what the ministry is?
After Zach passed away, I was like every victim. I was waiting for the perpetrator to be found, and we got to court. But in court, I couldn't hate them, and I found it so hard. Instead of me hating them, I felt sorry for the boys. I saw 5 boys in the dope, and knowing that in my community that time, 6 young people are gone. My son is not coming back. And those 5 boys, if care is not taken, their life will not be the same again. And as I was struggling with unforgiveness, and I would come home and pray. And there was a time that I was made to remember what Jesus has done, what he has done, given his life to purchase forgiveness for me. And that actually succumbed me, made me feel really awful. And I remember going back to court the next time I saw those boys, I had peace. The peace that was upon me in court that day was real. And I prayed, and I remember that I have been forgiven by the precious blood of Christ. Who am I to be holding on to unforgiveness? So I know the Bible told me to forgive as I have been forgiven. So I decided to forgive those boys. And I told my children, although everyone was still struggling, the pain there, it's a pain that will never leave us. But myself and one of my daughters started going to prison through the prison ministry. And then from prison, when we tell the story, when we tell them about forgiveness, how we've been able to forgive the boys, and telling them it couldn't be, it can never be in our strength to do that. And the one question that we've been to many prisons, and then one question that they ask, inmates ask us, is that do you go to schools? Because if I've had this, maybe I won't be here. And then by God's grace, we're employed by London City Mission and to go into school. And we started going into school. And we, at the beginning, we will go to Peru, we'll go to secondary school, we'll go to secondary and older. Later on, we thought, we sat down. It was just by the Holy Spirit that one day my daughter was walking and called and thought, maybe we should go into primary schools. It is good to reach out to young people. It's something that we need to catch them young. And she sent email to few primary schools, and within an hour we had lots of reply asking Operation Forgiveness to go into school, because schools are having issues with year 5 and year 6. And so we started going to school. We started going to primary school, and we see year 6. We go in, we talk to them about the ripple effect of knife crime, of even crime, or any crime. We tell them about about forgiveness, and we tell them about that we are made in God's image, the value of life. We'll talk to them about how bottling issue. Many of our young people are carrying a lot. We might see them with their hooded, they put their hood up. Sometimes it's covering their shame, their pain, and whatever they suffer, the trauma in their life, and allowing them to relieve that through forgiveness by asking them. We ask them to forgive somebody. If you're carrying something, you have to leave it. You have to release it to be able to move on and to be able to change the way, the trajectory of your life. We know early intervention work, and that is what we try to go in and talk to them about forgiveness, because we believe forgiveness is the key. When we are in prison, when we talk to inmates, we know that many of them are in prison just for little mundane thing, like somebody stepped on my trainers and I slapped the person dropped and the person passed away, and you are in prison for that. Or I'm in prison because of a road rage. I don't want to agree with somebody who is driving in a way. And things like that actually make us, that if we catch young people, if we're able to show them that this is the way you can forgive, it doesn't mean that you accept what the person has done. You forgive and move on. It can change your life. You can be able to live better. by forgiving, people. And then we'll talk to them. We'll let them know that we are Christian, and we are talking that is our belief. And especially what happened to us, it's not forgiving those boys. It's not something that is in our strength. It is only the Lord who help us to do that.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Sarah. You explained it really well. So Operation Forgiveness is an interactive workshop that we take into primary schools, where we explore with year 5 and 6 children, as Sarah said, the ripple effects of knife crime, the power of forgiveness. We really unpack why it's so important to forgive. There's been lots of research, lots of science, lots of studies done on how important forgiveness is for our mental health, for our physical health, and we unpack all of that. We talk about what forgiveness is and what it isn't. We talk about when it actually is not okay for people to hurt you, but actually we can forgive even in that. We're very trauma aware, and I think we talk to the children about how they have a part to play in stopping knife crime, and that's the key thing, really, the power of forgiveness and the way that they have a part to play. So at London City Mission, we know Operation Forgiveness is effective. We've seen it in working in schools around London for the last 6 years. The Operation Forgiveness team have been going into schools for 6 years and running this. And we know that early intervention works. Steve's already talked about that. But there's only so many schools the Operation Forgiveness team can go into in 1 week or 1 month or 1 year. So we've developed a top quality package where we train volunteers from churches to deliver Operation Forgiveness in their local schools. And this means that lots and lots more schools can now be reached right across London, and many more children can be empowered. So Sarah, one last question, if you could answer it quite quick, because I know we're sort of running over, but what message do you have for the people on this call today who want to do something with their churches to respond to knife crime? What would be your...
Like you said, we as a team, we've been to many schools. We've reached thousands of children, of young people, secondary school, primary school. And if we can partner with churches to go into their local schools, do you know how many millions of young people will be reached by churches going in and sending volunteers to schools? It's only 1 day in a week they're going to go in and deliver to year 6 before they go into secondary school, and that will go with them when they move, the young people going from primary school to transferring to secondary school is really important. And we having churches going in to deliver Operation Forgiveness is the joy in there is that as a group from LCM, it is hard for us. We've been to school, primary school, where a young boy put his hand up that, is this what Christians do? I want to, how can I be a Christian? We cannot refer those young people into anywhere, but churches going can bring a young person like that into their program, into whatever they are doing, into the activities that they can invite young people back into the churches. And that would be the joy of churches, and we will be able to reach more young people. Young people they're carrying trauma, and some of them don't even know the Lord. They don't know, they've never heard of anything that that can change their life. And I believe that forgiven is key. If young people can learn to forgive from now, they don't bottle anything, they have freedom. That is, and I hope that churches will see this as an opportunity to go into school, into their local school. Imagine if all the London boroughs churches go into their local school. Many young people will be reached, and many lives will be changed. They will save many lives. And it's just for churches to take Jesus' love and forgiveness into school.
Thank you, Sarah. I think We at Operation Forgiveness would love for you to take part in sharing Sarah's story, sharing Zach's story in schools right across London. I'd like to finish by reading some rap lyrics that a 10-year-old boy wrote during Operation Forgiveness creative response last time I delivered Operation Forgiveness in a school in New Cross. The afternoon session is set aside for children to process and respond in different ways. I'm not going to rap his lyrics because I can't. Did a very good job of rapping, but I'm gonna read them out for you. He wrote this: forgiveness is the key. Forgiveness sets you free. Forgiveness starts with you. Forgiveness starts with me. I think that's very poignant for us here tonight. If you do want to do something, something very tangible that you and people in your church can do in your local schools to prevent youth violence in your local community with those local young people, then please do come to our next Operation Forgiveness Vision Night. Experience Operation Forgiveness and find out more. It's in Croydon on Tuesday, the 28th of November, 6:30, 7 o'clock start. Please do come and bring a group of people from your church. You can find out how easy it is to join us and to make a difference right where you live. I will be sharing an email address where you can register online in the chat, and possibly a flyer if I can work out how to put it in there. So thank you very much.
Right. Thank you very much, Charlotte and Sarah, for that, and the London City Mission team. Right. We have just a few more minutes to go. Right. So we will take some questions. So questions to Steve and to the Operation Forgiveness team. So if you do have any questions, you can lift up your electronic hand and then go for it. Any questions? Or alternatively, you can put the questions in the chat box.
So Moira Austin.
Yeah, it's a slightly technical question. Sorry about this, but Steve, you talked about Beveridge. What impact do you think William Temple had at that time?
Say that again. I talked
William
about
Temple and his work with the politicians at the time of the Beveridge report. I think he had a big impact.
Yes, I think he did have a big impact. I think that he had a big impact because he
Steve, your network's not very good.
View that the church must be referred to that. William Temple referred to the fact while he and to not be engaged in the world was, in his understanding, the greatest sin that we could ever commit. So he pushed the church into public engagement and public involvement. He regarded the withdrawal of the Christian community into our church buildings as a huge neglect of our Christian responsibility. Of course, all you've got to do is look around. All you've got to do is look around London. Somebody's ringing me. I'm very sorry. All you've got to do is look around London, for instance, and you'll see it's littered. The landscape is littered with steeples and church towers and church buildings. Historically, the church has had a huge impact on our society. What we have to do is get beyond our doors in the way that the projects that we've heard presented this evening are doing. But my plea is that every church should take on its responsibility, because as I quoted, I think following in the steps of William Temple in my amateur way, as I quoted Isaiah, it's as we do that our day dawns, that our revival comes. It strikes me in the work of Oasis over the years that as I've become involved in society, I've been enlivened. It's not first and foremost that I bring hope to others. Hope is created for us, and hope is also created for others. there's a great opportunity for us. I've put in the chat now my book, which contains a lot more about what I say and how we get back to what Beveridge was talking about.
Right, thank you very much, Steve. Yeah, any further questions? Either Steve or the Operation Forgiveness team.
If whilst we're waiting for a question to be asked, I can tell you a very brief story. I was asked to go and open a new hall for a Church of England, and I won't tell you where it was, but the vicar asked me to open this wonderful new hall. It was a wonderful new hall, and after the opening event, he said, "We built this hall because," he said, "as you can see, we have many wonderful senior people in our church, early retired, a wonderful church, but we lack young children and young families, and that's what we're praying for, and that's why we built this hall." Well, it so happens that the week before, I was in the school directly across the street. This is it's a main road, but on one side of the main road is the school, and on the other side of the main road is the church, and they've both got the same name. They're not called St. Andrew's, but it's something like that. And I said to him, I said, "But I was in the school the other day, and they were crying out for people to come and run their football club and their reading club, and they'd really like to start a little farm on the piece of green land that they've got, a growing club. And they need people to come in and just sit with children who arrive early for breakfast. They're looking for volunteers we're looking for volunteers will help in all those ways, but we're starved of them." The school, called St. Andrew's, inverted commas, their problem was they didn't have any senior people who had time to give to nurture these children and create safe pathways for them. The church's problem, St. Andrew's, just a short walk across the road, there was even a zebra crossing there. Their problem was that they had no children and young families. The answer to both problems was found in collaboration and support. So often the answer's obvious, and that's all we've got to do, step out and take it. You don't have to be an expert. It's just about giving time to young people. This is the life-saving thing.
I've got to take my mute button off, Steve, just to because I'm sitting here just cheering you. It's good. I haven't seen you for about 20 years in person, but I remember literally a couple of decades ago hearing you speak and just thinking that's the sort of minister that I want to be one day, is somebody who sees that. And it's exactly mirrors the experience here. I've only been here where I am for 3 or 4 months, and literally have spent that 3 or 4 months doing exactly what we would expect any new priest to do in an area: go out, speak. We've got 5 primary schools, all of them open their doors, want us in, get people in. This week we took a group of 4 elderly people into one school, 4 elderly people into another school. Mutual flourishing is potentially just waiting there to happen as they sit and listen to one another read, sit at lunchtime and share lunchtime together, bump into each other on the street. You get a phone call from the head teacher the next day saying, "Where can we go, take the children now to go and meet older people?" You're in a care home. The care home say, "Yeah, great, it's what we've been waiting for." You know, there's just opportunities, simple opportunities like that all over the place for people to connect, and not to sit in our churches, like you say, and just wait and wonder where all these children are, and putting on all these great toddler groups. Get out there to where they all are. They're in our schools, and older people are in their homes or in the care homes. Let's connect the two together. Let's do stuff together.
Yeah, and the last word from me, I agree absolutely with that. A last word from me. We employ probably 4,500 teachers. We run dozens of primary schools, and this is the truth. And you can check it out in your community, wherever you are. You can go to any primary school in Britain, in London, in South London, and you can ask the school this: that school, whilst the child is in reception or year 1 or year 2, they know already which children are likely to be excluded, exploited, and criminalized. What we tend to do is we wait until a child is in year 10 or 11 in the arms of some county lines gang. They've been groomed and they're working the street and they're doing drugs. And then we work as hard as we can to get them out of trouble. Early intervention is the best way to do this. And early intervention is easy. That's what we need to do. It's simply that child having someone to sit alongside them. And lastly, behind every child that's struggling, there's normally at least one parent that's struggling too. Not because that's not a judgmental statement. It's often a mum or a dad who's struggling on their own and they don't know what to do. And there's no one to turn to and they're scared of the school itself. But if there's someone who would befriend them and walk with them, it's an extraordinary thing how this never grows into being a case of a child that's banished from school or appears in the courts. The best way to deal with serious youth crime is before it ever happens, about 10 years before it happens.
Right. Thank you. Thank you very much, Steve. Thank you all for coming. Well, we unfortunately would have to bring this to an end. But I also hope, I mean, one of the experiences I have also found is that it's much easier for the historic churches to engage with the schools than for the newer churches. And I've also found, even a problem with the representation, ethnic minority representation within the chaplaincy. These are some of the issues I've raised at some of the meetings within churches together in England and all of that. Chaplaincy representation within the prison service, within the health service, and all of that. I just hope that working together with some of these organizations, it would be easier for the newer churches, Pentecostal churches and other churches to also be able to have access to the schools and other institutions, because knowing that a lot of times those who are more likely to be affected by these issues are people who are more likely to come from our community. All right. So thank you very much to all our speakers, Steve, Joe, Jerome, Charlotte, and Sarah. Yeah, have I missed anyone? Okay. Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you, Reverend Patrick, for all the technical support, and Claire for putting this together. Right. Okay. So shall we pray, please? Father, we thank you and bless you for all the discussions we've had tonight. We pray the Lord, as we leave, you shall continue to speak to us and enlighten us, oh God. Give us more ideas, oh God, as to how to address these problems within our society. Help our churches to get out of the four walls, Lord, and to be more involved and engaged within our communities, Lord. So we shall, as has been discussed, we will be able to identify issues and deal with them long before they mature and become very problematic in the wider society. Give us the needed resources, Lord, and help us to develop partnerships, oh God, to make this very effective. We thank you and we bless you. In Jesus' mighty name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
So God richly bless you all and have a wonderful Christmas.